Hello and welcome back to FatbossTV. Today we're having a look at the Socrethar the Eternal encounter in the Hellfire Citadel on the 6.2 PTR.
Yes, and this fight is a very interesting encounter. It starts off with you fighting some giant soulbound construct, but when you actually do manage to kill that, you use the soulbound construct to fight the boss. That's such a cool idea. Yeah, it's really neat.
It's really cool that you can do that, but it's only for one person to use.
Yeah, which kind of makes sense. It's like got one space for it, but it does kind of make the rest of the fight maybe a little bit dull for everyone else. But I still think it's unique enough to kind of get away with it. It's a cool fight.
Now, with all these PTR videos, what we do is just give you guys a preview of the boss and how it potentially may look on live servers. But of course, it is not on live servers, which means anything could change before it does reach that point. And if you are looking for a guide, that will be released in the first week. So just look out for that. There will be a link in the description and in the comments. So this encounter is a two-phase fight. In the first phase, you are fighting the robot, like Alex said, and in the second phase, you'll actually get the chance to start doing some damage to the boss. But let's start off and let's talk about how the robot works.
Now, one mechanic that the construct will do for the tanks to worry about is something called Reverberating Blow. This will deal a large amount of physical damage to all targets in a cone, which is directed towards the tank. This ability also applies 3 stacks of a debuff called Shattered Defenses, which is divided between the closest targets to the tank that are also within the cone. And the Shattered Defenses debuff, like pretty much all it does is it increases the damage taken by the Reverberating Blow by 200% per stack. So I guess the whole idea is that you have the tank plus 2 other people soak the Reverberating Blow so the Shattered Defenses debuff won't be so high that the tank will just get one shot. On the PTR, wasn't really something we needed to think about. Really.
Yeah, it wasn't really necessary at all. But we can imagine, especially on maybe Mythic, it may well be necessary. But yeah, but that ability we were just stacking CDs on the tanks and it was absolutely fine. Another ability the construct has is Fellblaze Charge. This will just target a random player, charge towards them and leave a trail of like gooey shit. If you stand inside this goo, it slows you and it deals ticking damage. And for the majority of this first phase, you are stacked. But if the player that is targeted moves out of the group, this will allow other people just to stand still. If not, everyone has to move from it, which is a bit of a pain. You'll also have to deal with a cast called Volatile Fel Orb. This creates an orb that chases towards a player. When it reaches them, it will explode, dealing damage to anyone nearby. So if this does target you, you need to make sure that you leave the group, let it hit you, and then just move back.
Now, one of the more interesting mechanics that the actual giant robot does is something called Fel Prison. Now, this will create a giant targeting circle, and after a few seconds, it will become active. If anyone triggers this circle, it will spawn a Fel Crystal, which will stun them for 30 seconds. Now, this Fel Crystal it turns into a mob, so if you want to release those players from the stun, you need to destroy it. It's pretty much Darmak to an extent.
Yeah, it's just a massive Darmak spear, but it has way more health.
Yeah,
and takes a long time to kill, and obviously a 30-second stun's brutal. So.
Yeah, exactly. Everyone's going to hate you if you get caught in this. So pretty much just move from the Fel Prison and you'll be absolutely fine.
And the last thing that you could potentially have in this phase is a debuff called Overwhelming Power. This is really simple. It's just a dot. It's thrown on random players. All you can do is just heal it up. So you deal with all those abilities until you get the construct to 1 health. And it's at this point, Socrethar will emerge from it, and you will now have to start dealing with him. At the same time, you can now have one of your own players jump into the construct and start using all of its abilities. We always decided to put our tank inside the construct. It didn't really make sense to have 2 tanks in this particular phase. It wasn't really necessary. So instead of having one running around doing nothing, we just threw our tank in there. Now, while in the construct, you can do all of the abilities that you saw in the previous phase, apart from Overwhelming Power. That's just the random shitty debuffs. But all the abilities now deal 50% less damage than they did before. But an interesting thing about the abilities is that they actually still affect players. So, for example, if you wanted to put a Fel Prison on your entire raid team, you could do that.
Don't do that.
Don't do that, but you could. If you really want to fuck your raid and you hate everyone, you maybe want to leave your guild, just throw all that shit on them and then leave. That would be a pretty good way to go. But the main reason why you have the construct, and the main thing that you need to be doing, is that you need to be dealing with ads that spawn from different portals.
Now, 3 different coloured portals spawn in this phase, and they will start spawning different ads. There is a red portal, a purple portal, and a whitey-bluey portal. Now, from this white portal, you will get packs of these new ads called Haunting Souls. All these will do is fixate on random players, and if they do manage to reach those players, they will explode and deal a huge amount of damage to anyone nearby, as well as fearing them for 8 seconds. And it isn't dispellable. It's just horrible. They're the #1 worst ads in this phase. Now, these ads can be CC'd, they like with most things like stuns, knockbacks, slows, and all that kind of stuff. but most importantly, they can be dealt with by the construct. You can go over there and place a Fell Prison, slow them down with some of the purple shit from the Fellblaze charge, put a volatile orb on them, do reverberating blows on top of them, whatever the fuck you want to do. You can just CC them to shit. No one from the raid has to deal with them at all. That means that they can just focus on getting out more boss damage, which is perfect.
From the purple portals, you'll have the Shadow Callers. All these guys will do is just place dispellable dots on players, as well as cast Shadow Bolt Volley, which is interruptible. So if you can interrupt it, you should try and do that. These ads generally should be dealt by the raid, because they're nowhere near as bad as the souls, and it's a bit easier for the raid to do it. However, if you use the robot correctly, you should have like spare time here and there between dealing with the souls. You should have time to also attack the Shadow Callers, and ultimately if you do it perfectly, you could probably do both of them yourself without the raid helping whatsoever. Some more DPS is going out on Socrethar. Now before we move on to the red portal, we're actually going to talk about Socrethar first. Now he has two abilities. One is Apocalypse. This just does a load of AoE damage to the raid for over a 10-second period. Kind of works like Firestorm on Flamebender in Blackrock Foundry. It's the same shit. Make sure you use a healing cooldown and it'll probably cover it. But the second ability, which is the most important one, is something called Exert Dominance. Now this is an interruptible cast that does a huge amount of damage to the construct. You need to interrupt this as much as you possibly can, because if the construct reaches 1% health while there's a player inside, Socrethar will actually take it back, and the fight will then transition back into phase 1 again. And of course, you can only deal damage to Socrethar in phase 2, and the fight is only completed once Socrethar dies, so you want to try and keep out of phase 1 as much as you possibly can. Interrupting it every single time is not really a big issue. If you set up 3 DPS to interrupt, that will probably be fine. However, there is an issue because from the red portals, there is an ad called the Dominator.
Now these have 2 abilities. The first one isn't too bad, but you need to know about it. It's a 2-minute long debuff which can just go out on any random target, and it causes them to deal pulsing AoE damage to anyone within 10 yards. So make sure if you have it on you, you move away from everyone, otherwise you'll be killing them. But the main thing is that while these Dominators are alive, Socrethar is completely immune to all damage and interrupt effects. So because of the whole interrupt effects part of it, this ad becomes #1 DPS priority 100%, because while Socrethar is immune, he'll just be pretty much spam casting the Exert Dominance while you can do absolutely nothing about it. And generally because of these Dominators, it makes it so you cannot really stay in phase 2 forever, because they will spawn in every now and then. Socrethar will get casts of Exert Dominance off, you can't do anything about it, and it will eventually transition from phase 2 back into phase 1. Now, we imagine that this, you do have to do it very, very carefully, because if you go into phase 1, yes, Socrethar will get back into the machine and everything, and the ads will stop spawning. However, any leftover ads that are there, you'll have to deal with. And if that means that it's a brand new pack of souls, or if you got some other caster ads while you're trying to deal with the giant construct at the same time, it's going to be a bit much. So just make sure that you clean up as much as possible when you are going from phase 2 back into phase 1, and you should be absolutely fine.
Yeah, that is probably the idea of it. It will be that transition that will make or break this fight for your guild.
Yeah.
But ultimately, it wasn't too difficult of an encounter. Of course, whoever goes inside the machine has to pretty much hard carry. If they do their job wrong, then it's a wipe, essentially. The ads are too difficult for you to deal with alone, as well as actually getting some damage out on the boss. But it's a really, really good encounter, really, really enjoyable. And Mythic, after we did the Mythic testing as well, there's one extra ad that, oh my god, it makes it so annoying.
It's an amazing fight on Mythic, so you have that to look forward to as well. So thank you very much for watching, guys. If you did enjoy this video, then make sure you do give us a like. It helps us out a lot. And if you'd like to see any of the other Hellfire Citadel PTR preview videos, then we have got a playlist that you can find a link to in the description below. And of course, we'll see you on the live stream.
Thanks for watching.
Thank you.